What did the retail sales number move the dial? But we've seen dollar strength of late, and it's notoriously hard to predict. With so many people were talking about a weak dollar. But how does this whole notion of the Federal Reserve tapering its asset buying program, fit into your dollar story?
We still expect to see a bit more dollar strength into the year end. And I think quite simply, US still stands out when it comes to both the relative economic performance and the inflation dynamic. So if you look at the Fed taper announcement, our view is that we'll get that announcement in either November or December. But I think for the FX market, it's not just the timing of taper per se, but also the pace of taper, which at the moment is still quite uncertain. Is it going to be done within 6 months, 8 months, or 12
Exactly,
months?
it's going to be the next wall of worry,
exactly,
isn't it?
Exactly.
You get this and then that, yeah.
And I think the big market reaction to the dollar yesterday does say that taper is not fully in price yet. And until we get this clarity out of the Fed on how taper is going to happen, I think risk FX would struggle to rally more broadly.
Try and give me a sense of who the winners and losers are in this as well, especially in this part of the world when we look at some of the emerging market currencies.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be quite interesting. So going into the taper decision, we have been staying defensive. So we like the Taiwan dollar because of structural trend. We have been talking about a surging current account surplus against capacity constraint for the lifers to recycle that surplus. We also like the Singapore dollar going into the October MAS meeting because we expect the MAS to have scope to actually lift the Sing slope. But then, at this stage, I think things like the Indonesia rupiah is also getting quite interesting. And of course, there's still a number of hurdles when it comes to the Fed taper. And domestically, we expect a bit of a pickup in domestic demand after the easing of the COVID restrictions. But I think increasingly we need to look into it because there's a better scope for Indonesia export and trade surplus to be sustained going into next year.
Trang, it's been a painful year for Asian FX. Year to date, almost all of them are in negative territory versus the USD. The Thai baht in particular down about 10% year to date. The pain isn't over for the baht, is it?
Yeah, but I think we're getting towards the sort of, the end of it. I would say that, when it comes to Asia FX in general and also the baht, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'd say that because the vaccine coverage is picking up in a lot of the EM Asia countries. And even for Thailand, in early next year, we should get to 70 to 80% population coverage. And that should allow a better recovery when it comes to domestic demand. Now, of course, the key for the baht is still, border opening, the return of tourism at this stage is still uncertain. But I think the fact that, the market has already priced it down a lot, so the baht real effective exchange rate is down more than 10% since COVID. I think there's a better scope for, underperformance to start to lessen going forward when it comes to the baht.
Earlier, you talked about how the Indonesian rupiah is looking pretty attractive. There are still expectations that yields could get to 2%. If that were to happen, wouldn't the Indonesian rupiah be under pressure just like the Indian rupee because of the current account situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a very interesting dynamic. US yield is going to rise, but our view is that it's going to happen gradually. So, for example, our end-year forecast for the 10-year yield is 155. Now, it will still be a drag for the high carry, so the INR and IDR included. But for the IDR specifically, foreign holding of Indonesia bonds is a smaller proportion now because obviously a BI increasing buying of government bonds. So the share of foreign investor is being diluted. So that reduces the sensitivity to the Fed taper and US yield. And on top of that, we've talked about, I think there's a more sustained improvement in Indonesia exports and trade coming from is a booming nickel and steel industry. I think one very interesting development that we have seen is that because of the Indonesia government ban of nickel ore exports and its encouragement of greater investment in domestic processing facilities and capacity, together with the fact that China is cutting production onshore due to its emission drive, we are seeing a massive increase in Chinese investment in Indonesia for all of this ore processing capacity. And much of this output will come online this year and next year, and they end up being exported back to China.
Trang, let's just, you mentioned China, and the thing here is that we have a look at Bond Connect southbound, northbound, of course, starting off. How does that change things for the RMB?
I think
it's a huge market here, so
yeah.
you know, and there should be more liquidity in the system as a consequence.
Definitely. So I think for liquidity, we will see, better liquidity for both the onshore market, but especially for the offshore CNH market as a result of this new, investment link, the Southbound Bond Connect and the Wealth Management link. Now, in terms of the RMB direction, I think that this new opening is really the policy answer to balance RMB appreciation pressure. Because, so far this year, despite the volatility on the China equity market, RMB is behaving like a safe haven here. Because of the closer link to the bond market, which at the moment is only one way, right? It's only foreign investor buying into Chinese bond. But once you open the other leg and allow Chinese investor to also buy, a greater amount of offshore bond, that would help balance that appreciation pressure. And I think, towards the end of the year, we start to see, that playing more upside to dollar RMB.